Collect the vote.
Mr. Ewing, Mrs. Sealing, Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr.
I'm
Updike,
here.
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Milius. Yes. Approved.
Very good. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Very good. Thank you. We'll move on to reading of the mission and the vision of Spring Hill USD230. Our mission is to be a school district that engages students to learn, create, adapt, and succeed in an ever-changing world. Our vision is to maintain small town values and empower each student to achieve world-class success. It's always important to keep those in top front center as we work through our meeting this evening. Thank you. Business with individuals. Rachel?
No cards were presented.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the consent agenda, which consists of approval of the consent agenda items, approval of the minutes from our June 12th, 2023 meeting, a clerk's report, a treasurer's report, payroll and claims, personnel, renewal of property casualty and workman's compensation rates for fiscal year 24, PLC dates, YMCA contracts, acceptable use policy, and the content filter. Any comments or discussion on the consent agenda items?
I just had a question on the property and casualty. Did we take any of the options or just take the standard quote?
Yeah, we checked. We couldn't find any significant savings in any of the options they presented. So
I couldn't remember.
some years we can move the deductible and save significant money. This year wasn't one of them.
Okay.
Very good. Any other comments or discussion?
Mr. President, I move for approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
It's moved in second for approval of the consent agenda. Any final comments or discussion? Rachel, please collect the vote.
Mrs. Sealing, Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Updike,
Yes.
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Milius. Yes. Approved.
Very good. Thank you. Moving on to good news recognitions and announcements. Dr. Luttrell.
Yes, being course of summer months, we did not have a lot of people on campus, but things still do occur. We had recently we were recently notified that several of our communications department had documents that they had submitted, through their National School Public Relations Administrators Association for consideration for awards at the national level for digital media excellence as well as publications. And Spring Hill Schools Communication and Engagement Department received several recognitions. The Award of Excellence for the website with the website redesign. The Award of Excellence also for the branding package that was associated particularly with the new Forest Spring Middle School mascot. The Award of Excellence for printed marketing materials, particularly our special services brochures that highlight several of our programs that are targeted for particular students. We had also the Award of Merit for our Spring Hill Schools Magazine Fall 2022 issue. And then we also had the Award of Merit for our middle school 22-23 middle school handbook. And we had an honorable mention in the digital marketing materials for the 21-22 school year Stick with Spring Hill series, which is an ongoing series that promotes, staff members and what are the things that they most like about USD230. So again, we have received a lot of accolades in the not only this school year, but in prior year, especially because he's go back, not only to just this past school year. And as we market for staff, Ms. Hackney will talk a little bit in her report, we're continually receive quite a compliments from both regular stakeholders, parents, and them, as well as other professionals from other school districts that see copies of whether it's our magazine, our handbooks, or other materials that we put out, and they like, hey, can we get a copy? We really like that. We want to try to mimic that. So again, congratulations to our hardworking members in our communications department for the work they do each and every day, and their work isn't going for naught. It is being recognized, especially by others and their colleagues. That's all I have.
Very good. Well done. Thank you very much. There's a lot of folks involved in that, in the communication and engagement. So thank you very much. Job well done and well recognized. Moving on to our discussion items, which is the first item up is human resources, the personnel report. Dr. Luttrell.
We have Ms. Hackney here, and she is going to, remember a couple months ago, she gave part one that just kind of talked about, what positions we had open, how many we had filled, and we said she'd be back in June to kind of give a near fiscal year end update in terms of now what it looked like in terms of what our staffing, how many positions we'd filled, as well as, what some of the feedback that has been and continues to be received, as staff depart for one reason or another. Our HR department does attempt to do a very strong job of following up with individuals and doing an exit interview, whether it's through paper, whether it's an in-person interview. And so this evening, Ms. Hackney is going to take a few moments and highlight some of the information that she's found from that survey, as well as just talk about where we're at personnel-wise heading into the new 23-24 school year. Michelle.
Good evening and welcome. Thank you for welcoming me back to talk about retention. Our last visit, it was a lot of information about recruitment, and retention is the new recruitment with the teacher shortage, staff shortage around. Our efforts to recruit are important, but our efforts to retain are most important. So today's presentation, I hope to provide you our retention rates, and I'm going to show you the past 3-year retention rate data. I want to show you the attrition data, basically where are our people going when they leave us, what we're doing to retain staff, looking at our certified and licensed staffing updates, classified staffing updates, and our supplemental updates. So as I said, really that retention is our new recruitment. It's really important. There was a time when we had people lined up for miles to take jobs in teaching, and those days are over. We are working against the clock. We're working against other districts, and we're working really hard to make this the place that people want to come and work and stay, and doing lots of things to do that. And as we go through the presentation today, I hope to share with you some of the things we're doing to address those needs. So I'm going to start with some hard data. As you can see from this chart, we have the number of licensed employees working from us straight from Doug's budget book, page 49, I think you said. The number of departing employees the last 3 years, and then our retention rate. Our retention rate has gone up slightly from the 2020-2021 school year. We did have a dip in the 21-22 school year, but I like it going up. My perfect world, we'd have a 90% or higher. So as we're looking at the strategic plan, my goals will be to set that retention rate as high as we possibly can within reason. The reasons for departures this 22-23 school year, we had 4 retirements. And I do note that this data does include administrators. The page before was just our licensed and certified staff. So 4 retirements, one of those was an administrator. This was an unusually high number, 9 staying home for the school year. That's not uncommon to have some of our teachers stay home for a year or so. The number 9 was rather high, which I'm happy for them to be able to do that. 7 of those were staying home with children, and one of those was with an ailing family member, and another one was a family related staying home. 13 leaving education. Those are the numbers that we have to worry about. Last year, let's see, what did I have? Out of education, we had 15 last year getting out of education. I have seen at least 3 of those coming back to education. We got one of them back to our district, and I've seen information coming from other districts requesting information about their history here. So some are returning, but 13 one year and 15 last year. Those are some numbers we do have to worry about. We have 10 that are teaching in other Kansas districts. I won't give those other districts credit for taking our people, but there were 4 different districts that those folks went to. We had 4 out-of-state teaching. Most of the time, our folks, when they're leaving our state to go to another state, it's Missouri. This year it was Texas and Wyoming and 1 Missouri. 3 leaving for administrative jobs in Kansas, one of those moving to the district level, and a couple that are unknown. We do have a report that we are to include where our employees go when they leave. So we try to keep good tabs on where they're going.
Michelle, the 10 that went to other districts were all of those nearby districts? Okay.
Yes. We'll get them back.
Grass isn't always green.
It is not. So we have that hard data, those numbers that I can show you. And then we gather a lot of information to really look deeply at what makes our employees happy, what makes them want to stay here, those things that could cause them to leave, and those that are leaving, the reason for their departure. This was an unusual year as far as exit interviews. The exit interviews were primarily fairly positive. You know, sometimes when someone's exiting, they're upset. These were primarily positive, and I'll be able to share here in a moment some of the reasons why they left. So those exit interviews kind of help us. They're already out the door, heading out the door, so it's kind of too late to save them, but we can do things to improve our organization to help keep people here. Stay interviews. I sent stay interviews to every single licensed employee in the district. A lot of times I'll just choose 5 or 6 at each building to get a sampling. This year it was really important for me to get the opinion of all of our licensed and certified employees. So that was really great data. I had 139 responses back on the stay interview information. I had all but 4 on my exit interviews participate. So I think our sample numbers were quite high. We do various surveys of our employees and then in-person meetings. You may or may not know this, that we meet monthly with Joranne Whitman representing our association and go over things with her. She can bring things to the table to talk about. We can bring things to the table to talk about. And oftentimes we're able to prevent bigger problems or continuing to do some of the good things that we're doing by those meetings. So lots of data collection, lots of opportunities to get feedback from our employees. This shows a little bit of how interesting the stay interviews and the exit interviews were this year. One of the questions on the exit interview and the stay interview, 3 words that describe our district. It's the hardest question for anybody to answer on those stay and exit interviews, but you can see by this Wordle how similar both of those were, and it kind of highlights the positiveness of the exit interview. We always have room for growth. Everyone was generally very, very honest in what they believe that we can grow in, but it's interesting, the words that occur more often you're going to see in the larger print, the smaller words would occur fewer times in those reports. So kind of just interesting, you know, and we know we're growing, that's the big one, but some of these nicer, more positive words like innovative, caring, kind, community, professional, optimistic, those are things that you really would like to see on an exit interview. And those do mirror a lot of what we're seeing in the stay interviews. So the themes with the exit interviews, I do promise the employees as we're doing exit interviews that it's confidential. I'm sharing in themes when I share with principals, when I share with my superiors, when I share with you all that we're working in themes. So the exit themes, the main reasons why our employees were leaving, our certified employees, spending time with children, family, the pay, work-life balance, pursuing other opportunities, and retirement. So those were the items that popped up the most in those exit themes. Both the exit and the stay interviews have around 10 questions, but one being, basically what caused you to leave? The stay themes, kind of to get them thinking about when you're driving to work, what do you look forward to? Overwhelmingly, our staff said the students. That made my heart incredibly happy to know that we are a student-driven organization, that people are here for the students. And second to that would be my colleagues, my teamwork, my coworkers. So that relationship with students and relationship with each other are really what draws them to work every single day. One question is, why have you chosen to stay? With great students, coworkers, my principal. It appeared so often on that question, and I can't wait to get the principals back. They know they're important. They know their jobs are important. They know the research says how important leadership is, but this was just an overwhelming answer on this survey that the principal was the reason why they stayed. The support that we provide, families, parents, where they live, where their children go to school. There was a time, probably 15 years ago, that the number of people in our community or in our schools that had children that go here, that also worked here, was quite low. So that number is growing. They have a passion for making the place that their children go to school a better place. The location, the size of the community, the sense of community, that popped up a lot. That were student-centered, that they have a voice, they're able to give feedback. That's something that I don't know that we would have seen 10, 15 years ago, that feeling of they had so much of a voice, and that was appearing quite a bit. And just the values that our district stands for and lives by. One question on the stay interview is, what would cause you to leave? Would be pay. Keeping up with other districts. They recognized quite a few times on the stay interviews that our starting salaries were really good for our new teachers coming in, new to their career. But as they get further into their career here, that pay could be something that would cause them to leave, or if they receive lack of support. Support was something that they're receiving right now, but if they began to not receive as much support, that could cause them to leave. The least favorite part of the job, subbing. Again, prior to COVID, that wouldn't have made the cut. It was overwhelming, just having to sub, whether they're classroom teachers, all levels, being pulled in maybe during a plan time to sub, just across the board, subbing popped up quite a bit. So it's something that we're looking at very closely. We have addressed to some degree in the negotiated agreement that you all will be visiting with about later today. Not enough time, not enough plan time. Plan time did make the cut quite a bit in that survey. Disrespect, that was mentioned quite a bit. Disrespect, the perception of society on educators, things like that, but that disrespect, and then paperwork. They're also asked to give us some ideas to make things better. I did show those items that we are addressing, whether it be through the master agreement, whether it be through some of the things that we're doing internally, which was nice to get this information and it really made me feel like we're on the right track. It's some of the things we've been hearing for a few years that we've been trying to find a way to fix or to make better. So discretionary leave, that was all over the place on the stay interview, and as you'll be discussing later today on the master agreement, converting sick days over to those discretionary leave days. Supplemental pay increase, got it too. A retention bonus, maybe. More plan time, that takes money, that takes time, that takes effort. So that's something that we'll have to look at a little more closely. Improved communication. We're always trying to be better communicators. We can never communicate too much. So something that we're continuing to look more closely at. Better pay was mentioned quite a bit and improving the middle. We've done some things this year to improve towards the middle. So the next time we go into negotiations, who knows, we can maybe attack the middle a little bit. Insurance prices. We met 2 weeks ago talking about insurance and how to get those prices lower or at least break even with those and tackling our insurance prices. Daycare was mentioned. Having a daycare on site would be helpful. Alternative school, better maternity leave, and growth opportunities to advance. Those could be anywhere from leadership opportunities, different tracks for paras to teachers. And there are things that we are looking at quite closely right now. So retention. You probably are aware of the research regarding engagement and retention of employees. Those things including purpose alignment, pay and benefits, the culture, appreciation, work-life balance, and training and development. Those are the 6 drivers that you'll see not only in schools, but in corporations that do drive retention and engagement. As we're collecting this data from stay and exit interviews, as we collect data from interviews with staff, as we look at the data that was collected from the retention study that I'll talk soon, we do match these into these different buckets to see where are areas that we can improve on. So we have done a lot in the HR department with the communication department. It's truly actually been a gift working with Christopher and us working together to use, whether it be data from stay interviews, from exit interviews, looking at our employees, what draws them to Spring Hill? How do we keep them? How do we market us to draw people of those like-minded values and desires on places to work? We know that the generations, the millennials in particular, it's the generation that we're really working to recruit at this time. They're really wanting to find purpose in their jobs. So using all the information that we're gathering to create ways to draw those employees. So I want to take something that we usually use as a recruitment tool, the what's going well, the stick with Spring Hill. And I want you to look at it with a little bit different lens. I want you to look at this through
my name's Carter Couchman.
a different
I'm a
lens.
first-year teacher at Spring Hill High School, and I'm teaching mostly freshman English. It's been a great district to come to as a new teacher. They have a lot of great support for first-year teachers. Immediately, I was set up with Giselle McDonald as a resource colleague / mentor that just is a great partner to kind of walk through different lesson plan ideas. And then we, of course, have our PLC team, which is where I get with people like Andy Husted and Thomas Sharon and Michelle Welts and some other folks. And so just those connections of people that I've made has been really useful.
We knew that he was coming in. We were all very, very excited to meet our new team member. The English PLC team is a good time. We all really enjoy each other's company. I feel like we work really well together. We're really good about, sharing ideas and kicking around ideas with each other. And so to have another new member on our team was pretty special. That's him. All the time. I'm never in your hallway. Are you a hallway worker?
In the hallway, not necessarily. I'd say in general.
Yeah,
I'd say in general.
I'm gonna go. Carter.
Immediate. Close race, yeah.
It's a tie.
Okay, as we look at that great recruiting tool, we have a new teacher saying, I'm getting lots of support. But if we take a look at that through the lens of retention, what are you seeing with this video? We've got an experienced teacher that has taught for many, many years, came to us a few years ago from another district nearby, and then a brand new teacher. But as far as from a retention lens, what things are you seeing? Maybe even thinking about those drivers.
I mean, they both really wanted to be here. Also, the one thing that the staff were saying that they wanted was leadership opportunities, and it looks like you're allowing these previous teacher or current teachers to be good mentors to the new teachers. And so, I mean, I don't know if that fit in your little.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have culture. You saw lots of smiles. This is not, they don't have a script. Christopher and his team show up, they take a quick video, they have some questions. So we've got culture, we've got smiles, we've got PLCs. That's a huge recruitment tool, but it's a huge retention tool. We have maybe generational differences, working together, enjoying each other, and then finishing off who likes Spring Hill the most. So these are things I can gush about Spring Hill. I gush regularly because I do love it so much. But that collaboration with our communication department, being able to capture that kind of in real time so we can show not only the retention side to draw people in, but what really helps people to stay here. So it was October of 2021, Emporia State University, along with a partnership with several other organizations, did the Kansas Teacher Retention Initiative. You may be familiar with that. I do have a link to it in this presentation. I'm not going to open it up, but that data was collected October 2021. We did have 100% participation of our licensed staff participating in that, adding our data to 20,000 other teachers across the state of Kansas. When they pulled duplications and data that was incomplete, it ended up being 18,427 bits of information, or 18,427 people that were certified teachers in the state of Kansas that gave feedback. It was compiled in March. I would say that the data, it's great data. It's getting a little old. I really do hope that they administer this again next year so we can compare that data. It was given in the middle of COVID. We as a district did quite well. I'm going to share a little bit about more our local data, but it does support some of those engagement and retention drivers as well. So things that our licensed staff in 2021 said that are areas that we're really strong in, that relationships with colleagues, that they have a feedback and voice, principal, the quality of principals, the instructional leadership, relationship with the principal, and support and communication, the parent support, the reputation of the district, opportunities for growth and feedback. Are you hearing those drivers pop up in here? Ability to work with diverse student populations, location, size of the district, safety, technology, resources, and instructional materials. Along with that, some of the things that popped up in this study for our local data would have been the amount of plan time. Again, I've shaded the ones in purple that we are currently either have addressed or are addressing. Current salary, salary growth potential, professional development, personal and sick time, supports to assist with challenging behaviors, ability to secure substitutes, tuition reimbursement, society's view of teaching, supports for student and employee mental health. So just break down a few of those things. Since this data was collected, we've hired a couple behavior interventionists through our current negotiated agreement, through negotiations, looking at a current salary, the salary growth potential. Professional development it's improved light years since Dr. Smith has joined us. I mean, significantly has improved just the working together with all of the staff and the growth that we're making as a district. Personal and sick time, that's addressed in our master agreement. Things like society's view of teaching, we can continue to put out great videos, which do make some sort of an impact, doing things like that, but that's not something that we're going to be able to do much on besides just do a great job. And then support for our student employee mental health, enhancing our EAP, getting the materials out to our staff. How do they access that? So that will be ongoing, but it's better. There are things that we have been addressing.
Michelle, not to interrupt you, but the plan time that's going to come up a couple times, how much do you think that's related to the subbing? Like having to sub?
I think it's related to a point in history when there was a team plan and a regular plan time. I think that's primarily where that
Gotcha.
comes from. Elementary teachers, just not enough time. I mean, their plan time's pretty consistent and just not enough time in the day, but it was secondary more so reflecting on the need for more plan time. So now what do we do with this information? We continue to collect it. We continue to listen. We continue to try to do things with the information. If I'm just collecting information and doing nothing with it, if I'm not sharing it, I'm so sorry. If I'm not sharing it with my team to figure out what we can do to improve things, then it's worthless information. So it's something that I'm really committed in my exit interviews to listening, seeing what I can do, what I can pass out to those that I work with, that we can work together to improve the environment and keep our people and retain them. So I also wanted to share today the current openings. That was something I promised that I would bring to you. We're getting better and better. I had a social studies position posted and was able to take this off Friday with an acceptance of our 7th Spring Hill High School grad that will be joining us. So I'm excited about that. So this incoming class will be 7 of our Spring Hill grads that have come back to Spring Hill to teach for us. A few special education positions. The big one that we're working on right now is the biology, physical science position. Mr. Williams has a lead on someone that's a marine biologist that is looking at Emporia State, the transition to teaching program. So we've had really good success in folks that have gone that path. So we're hoping that that pans out. We have what ifs, but we're not going to think about what ifs right now. The backup plan for our special education positions, we believe we might be able to absorb one of those special education positions. We're continuing to look. Every once in a while, we have that unicorn that moves in kind of late in the summer and they want to come to work for us, and we'll continue to hope for that. But we do have a plan B. And then the speech language pathologist, we had a SLP that was moving into the area just contact us last week. So we're hoping that pans out. If not, we may have to contract for those positions. So it's looking better for the licensed and certified. Now classified, we are beginning to have a little bit of an uptick in people accepting jobs in those classified positions. We continue to try to be marketable in what we're paying and what we're offering. Our classified positions, we have 4 building aid positions available, 23 instructional paras. We've hired 4 or 5 of those within the last couple of weeks. So we're making some headway. 17 custodial maintenance. We're using a cleaning service to backfill for some of those missing positions, but we continue to search for great talent. And we hired somebody for Kylie's team just last week, and then 3 nutritional services. And we generally have pretty good luck filling those positions. And then our supplementals are posted on the website. I don't have those listed here, but we're in much better shape with our classified, even opening a new school this year than in years past. So retention in a nutshell. And it's something that we all play a part in keeping our people. So any questions for me?
If you had to just prioritize what 2, 3, small handful of actions, what would be your focus as far as a priority on retention?
I think we have an amazing culture. I think in those busy times, how do we all stop ourselves and be attentive to the needs? This summer, our administrators will be receiving some training with other Johnson County administrators on just generational differences and how to best meet the needs of the different generations. And I think that plays such a big part, that each generation wants a little something different from the work environment. How do we meet those needs would probably be the top. Pay is always, but I think we're making some good strides on that. I think slow and steady will win the race with that. And then plan time will always be one of the exit interviews I did, which was quite profound. And she said it so much better than I'm able to. She said, every day you're having a performance 7 or 8 times a day. And you're doing it with very little plan time, prep time to do that. You're expected to keep your audience engaged, and they need to get something from that performance. And if referring to teaching in that way, and it really is, when you look at it, that our teachers are performing every day, creating these wonderful lessons and doing it with very little time. And it's actually quite remarkable, the job they do. So ways that we can look at education a little bit differently to provide those opportunities for time.
Any other thoughts or questions? Comments?
I was really excited to see the relationship between the principals and exiting and retaining staff. That's neat. That's a good thing.
I really feel like with some of the people leaving, it was really hard to sit down with them, because it's like they didn't want to leave either, but this opportunity, this amount of money, and I don't think we can put a price tag on what teaching and learning and the impact we make on students, and what Spring Hill itself does and supports, and the community that we have. And I think it's very attractive. It's been what's attracted me to this area and staying here for as long as I have. It's just that sense of community and the direction we're going.
Do you feel like you have a good handle on what like current teachers are getting those advanced degrees that are going to be looking for administrative positions? Wouldn't think that you would automatically know that. Do you ask for that information so that you know which ones are kind of coming on the horizon?
Yeah, we do. Most of them do their practicum or internship work within the district, usually with their principals. So we know who those people are. Some say, I'm doing this and I may use it 10 years down the road. Some or more are actively looking. Our numbers are reduced from what they were once before. But that's a pathway that we're really looking strongly at. How do we continue to grow? I talked about our teachers that we're having this year that will be joining us that were once students of ours here. And we've got paras that are moving into teaching roles, and a few of our teachers moving into administrative roles. But how do we continue to develop that? I'm a product of that development, teacher, administrator in the district level. So.
Mm-hmm.
Great presentation. Thank you.
You guys make me nervous.
Thank you, Shelley.
Well done.
Well done.
All right, moving on to our second discussion item is the report on the financial impact of leasing district vehicles.
Yes, Mr. Schwinn put together a brief report. We just felt it was an appropriate time. It's been a couple of years, going on a couple of years since we've district transitioned, from owning their own vehicles into leasing them from enterprise. And the time was felt that it could be beneficial in a financial way in terms of save us some money or at least break even. And Doug's got enough information in here now. He's just going to put a couple quick slides together just to quickly highlight how that program's going.
Yeah, good evening all. I will say when Enterprise hit me up, it was kind of one of those too good to be true kind of things. And I kind of dragged my feet for a long time. So I'm excited to report that the numbers actually came in better than I anticipated. So you'll see on this first slide, and I got to give credit. The first slide came from Enterprise. They pulled our lease cost numbers, what our equity was returned to us for those sold leased vehicles, total expense. So they gave me the monthly cost per vehicle of just under $70 per month. I mean, I would love to go out and get a new vehicle for $70 a month. I'd do that any day of the week. So that is a fantastic number. And based on the next slide, I think it's even more fantastic. So Bill, am I in control, Phil? Let me see if I can flip it. Oh, no, I got it. So I thought, how could I put in perspective, what our annual expenses is on these 14 vehicles based on what we're getting back. And so on the left-hand side of my handmade teeter-totter, you will see that these 14 vehicles over the course of a year would cost just over 11,500 in lease payments. That's out of pocket, not total cost, because the other slide had total cost. And then on the right-hand side, it's important to note that our students and staff are in safer vehicles, period. I don't know how to put a dollar value on that, but heaven forbid we have an accident, and the difference between somebody being severely hurt and completely safe, it's reassuring to me knowing that our vehicles are almost brand new on the roads. This was one that was kind of brought to my attention, that there is some staff morale that has improved now that they're driving around in better, more reliable vehicles. If you remember our fleet from 10 years ago, we had some old beaters out there, and we had some rust and some holes in the floorboards and who knows what, and some of them weren't very safe to be on the roads. But we tried to stretch things as far as we could because dollars were precious. Dollars are still precious. We've just found a better way to spend them. So I don't know how to put a dollar value on that, but I do know people have mentioned, wow, it sure is nice to jump in a nice, reliable vehicle and go down the road. Now, one thing that I was able to get a dollar on is just our overall maintenance costs. I pulled a 5-year period from 2016 to 21, and we were spending about $25,000 a year to J&T Auto for various repairs, whether it be AC, transmission, you name it, lots of repairs. And then I looked at it from 21 through 23, a 2-year period, and it was already cut down to just under 7,800. So that is some real maintenance cost savings that we can put in our pocket and realize. And then just the fact that we're driving newer vehicles, we're not dealing with maintenance issues. We're not having to worry about something that fell off the vehicle that needs to be reattached, or something that's broke. So that's save time, and save time is money. Also, they're taking care of all the tags and licensing for us. They show up with the tags and all that done. So I don't have to send my staff down to the treasurer's office to get all that done. That's definitely dollars saved on our part. And I believe these newer vehicles get better gas mileage. I could probably calculate that number, but that would take a lot of time and effort. And I think there's better ways to spend my time. But the bottom line is there is some savings there. And then just if you think back to where we were a few years back, trying to come up with a good rotation, and the last rotation we were working on was about 3 new vehicles per year, and we were using capital outlay dollars and then pretty much driving them till the wheels fell off. So this to me has been a tremendous success. And I hope that this relationship continues with Enterprise for many years to come. And I'll probably just, in another year, give you an update, make sure the numbers still look good. But with that said, there's no action involved, just sharing information. I thought I'd open up and see if you guys had any questions for me.
I got a question.
Yeah.
How does that work usually at the end of a lease period, you got a big chunk of money you got to put in on it then? Do we just continually roll over and just staying on a 3-year lease, or what?
Yeah, basically, they put us on a lease where maybe it's 4 years worth of payments, and it's based on the value of the vehicle. Well, we may only drive it for a year because the resale market is wonderful on that vehicle. And so we'll sell it, or we won't. They'll sell it on our behalf, and they'll just credit that equity back to us. And then, we're right now, the savings that we're getting, they're rolling, and we're not even making lease payments right now. It's the equity that we're getting back when they sell them is paying for the new ones coming on. And the magic in all this, because I'm like, okay, how's this work? It seems too good to be true. As a government entity, we're able to buy them significantly discounted, and we basically drive them for a year. And a year later, the used car market's so good right now, they're selling them for about what we bought them for brand new on the lease. So, it's our government discount's what really helps us. If we wasn't getting the government discount, it wouldn't be quite as good. But yeah, we're basically driving them for a year and spending $70 on a month on average.
Okay, so we won't have a payment. They just roll them out from under us and we just keep.
Yeah, as soon as they sell them, they're crediting that back to us. And we're using that credit to turn around, and roll into the next lease, and it just keeps rolling. So.
It seems like we have more vehicles now too than we did.
Yeah,
Couple.
yeah, there's more than 14. 14 is just the first set of cars that we're able to put on a lease and actually turn around and get them sold. We have some that obviously haven't sold yet. And so once we have more of those rotating, we'll have a lot more numbers to share as far as how it's working.
Sure, I think that was on the insurance. That was also cheaper if
Yes.
too, so. All good
So,
news.
but all good news. Like I said, it was interesting. They hit me up about 10 years ago, but at that time we weren't big enough for them. They wanted, at least 20 vehicles in the fleet, and they said, well, thanks, but no thanks. And then about 4 or 5 years ago, they started hitting me up again. I was like, all right. And they says, we've got references. And I knew 2 gentlemen out, Goddard and Hayes, that did it, and they spoke very highly. And I said, all right, I'll look at the numbers a little closer. And I was looking at them, and I went to Phil and I went to Tim and Kylie. And I said, guys, is this true? Can we really do this cheaply? And we jumped in, and the numbers speak for themselves. It's been a really, really good relationship, and I've been really pleased. So it was a good chance to take, and it paid off.
Less work for us.
Yes. It's just reassuring knowing that we've got safe, reliable vehicles that we're transporting our staff and kids around. That to me is worth a lot. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Peace of mind.
Peace of mind. It's worth a lot. Yep.
Good. Any other questions or comments for Doug and Lee's program? I remember when this was brought before the board, and there were a lot of questions about, how can this be? And
Yeah,
it has worked out.
it's worked out good.
Very good. Thank you, Doug. We appreciate your time.
Yep.
Did you have? Oh.
IT's gonna be worried about not having the old vehicle to drive around.
Yeah, they miss the old hand-me-downs, don't you, Phil? So.
All right, very good. Thank you. Moving on to our third discussion item on revenue neutral intent form. Dr. Luttrell.
Yes, and again, Mr. Swin will remain at the podium, but again, this is the second year that by state statute, every government taxing entity, not just school districts, has to file an intent form that is non-binding with the state of Kansas, basically putting into writing what you think, whether or not your taxing entity will go revenue neutral in terms of live on the same amount of revenue as they did your current prior fiscal year. It's non-binding, and so we have to do that by July 20th. And so because we put our board calendar work session together, typically you would have the state software to do this, to actually know your numbers. That still has not become available. It's supposed to be available maybe late this week. But as Mr. Swin will explain, there's really a challenge to even thinking that we would go revenue neutral, simply because of the fact that, we're opening up for a spring. We've got, costs overall have risen despite AV growth. So he'll talk briefly about that, and then we can decide then whether you have enough information you feel that you would like to then move that to an action item, on down in the agenda, or if you want to, we can, if needed, schedule a special session to decide the issue. But Mr. Swin, if you want to take a few moments and just kind of walk them through that. I know Nick said we did this last year. We don't have exact numbers, but very few, and if any, but very few school districts or taxing entities are able to go revenue neutral. But Doug, I'll let you take it from here and give us just some brief information.
Yeah, thank you. I actually did attend a budget workshop in Girard at Greenbush last Monday, a week ago today, and it did come up, the whole discussion on revenue neutral. And in that room, there was only one district that thought they would be revenue neutral this year. And from best estimate, we think statewide, there might have been 5 last year, 5 out of 286. And I guarantee, well, I won't guarantee, but I would bet that those 5 districts were probably declining enrollment, and they were able to take advantage of their two prior year enrollment, and they were trimming staff and had some money there and good cash balances and decided, oh, we can do revenue neutral. It is virtually impossible to be revenue neutral if you're a growing district. And that's just a little growth. And as you know, we're high growth. So it never even crossed my mind to even think about putting a budget together that would be revenue neutral. It's just not possible. And the fact that we're open up for spring this year, and that is a huge cost in our budget. As much as I hate paying taxes, just like anybody else, we just can't be revenue neutral. So again, Dr. Luttrell mentioned this is not binding. It's just a number that has to be published in a letter that is going out by the county clerk. For the county clerk to be able to distribute those letters, they've set a July 20th deadline. So I will tell you the revenue neutral intent form that I have filled out, that's just a number. It's a placeholder. The proposed mill levy would be a 2 mil increase over last year. That's not our intent to raise the mill levy 2 mils, but you could get a question if somebody stops and does the math and goes, wait a second, I got my letter in the mail and it shows that the mill levy is going up. Is that what you're going to do with the budget this year? You can say that's right now. We don't know. We haven't put the budget together, but we have to set a lid. So if for some reason I put the numbers in the budget software and there's a need for a slight increase, we have the ability to go up 2 mils, but we can't go beyond that because that's what's published in the letter. I am extremely confident we will not need to go above 2 mils this year. I'm hoping that it can be flat, but I will not make any promises till I get to play with the numbers. So again, it's picturing a worst case scenario. It's also important to mention that the revenue neutral rate is calculated based on the district as a whole, but that doesn't necessarily translate to an individual taxpayer because maybe your property value stayed relatively flat. Maybe it only went up 1 or 2% where somebody else went up 30%. Well, your revenue neutral rate is much different to keep your taxes the same than that person who had a huge increase in value. So I don't like the concept. I know it was designed to give voters more transparency. I feel like our budget process already provides that transparency. We have a hearing. We encourage people to come to that. I am extremely disappointed that we're investing all this time and effort into this and money. We're going to have to someday we could end up having to pay for all the letters that are being mailed to all the patrons. So there is a lot of time and money involved in this process. And I really, in my humble opinion, it doesn't add to the transparency of the budgeting process. That's just my opinion.
The revenue that they're wanting to be neutral with is the revenue collected in the current year, correct?
Yeah, they're basically saying, your tax dollars, you pulled in 10 million from your patrons last year, to pull in 10 million this year. This is what your mill levy should be.
But we're projected to get 11 million, say, wouldn't we? It's for that, not for the 10 million for last year, or is it still go to the prior year?
It's trying to keep things level from one year to the next.
I thought it was just trying to say you're within your means for your amount you're getting this year.
No, ideally, I think the push is to make you live with the same amount of money you had last year, but as we know, costs are going up. So again, inflation alone is going to make people have to exceed the revenue neutral rates this year. But there's some declining districts out there that are, again, taking advantage of that second prior year. And maybe they've lost some staff or hired some new ones and they're saving some money and they got good cash balances and they can be revenue neutral. A growing district just can't live off of the same amount of money they had last year.
But aren't we getting a big amount of money from the county though too for all increased property taxes?
Yes, because the assessed valuation is going up significantly, it does generate more per mill. So, which is a good thing because we're gonna need that because of all the additional expenses we have this year with hiring a little over 20 new certified staff. You're talking right there's $1 million in just new staff. And opening a new facility such as Forest Springs, utilities, all the other support staff, administrators, it adds up pretty quickly. So it's good that our assessed valuation is going up because yes, that does translate into more cash for us in our budget.
Nels, it even makes it more confusing when you figure that last year we did not follow it. So the actual number that they wanted us to use, we didn't use. So now you've added to the next year. And you start thinking about that backwards and it's beyond comprehension to me. I wish the county was held to the same scrutiny they put us to with this. Because I've seen their budget. It's incredible. But yet they seem to be more focused on the school district than they are on the actual county.
They did change the form a little bit this year, the intent form. Last year, they didn't include the rec commission. This year, there was a breakout of the rec commission. I thought that was kind of interesting, but it does, since we do levy on their behalf, it does paint the overall picture. So you might see in the form, it was a little over 72 mills. That's because the rec commission was included in that, plus the 2 mil lid that we build in. So anyhow, the letters will be going out shortly after July 20th. You might get calls on it, but let them know that if for some reason the numbers come in fantastic, we'll try to, my goal is to get that mill levy down eventually. This is going to be a tough year because of Forest Spring, but hopefully long-term, we can see that mill levy come down again, at least till the next bond issue. So. Any other questions? And I would just recommend, I mean, if there was any slim hope of us being revenue neutral, I would let you think on it, come back again, vote on it. But I'm telling you, it's not possible. So,
Do we need to have a motion to move it to an action item? It's already on our
It's
agenda as
already-
an action item.
yeah.
No, we're good. We approved the agenda and it was concluded as an action item. Any other questions or discussion around revenue neutral for Mr. Swin?
Nope.
Thank you, Doug. Appreciate your time. Moving on to action items, we'll just move right into the revenue neutral county notification as our first action item. Dr. Latrell?
Again, as Mr. Swin just explained, if as a board, you would like to make a decision as an action and approve that the Johnson County revenue rate intent form be approved as presented by Mr. Swin, that would be the appropriate time to do that, and we can send that in and we'll be in compliance. Or if you would rather not, we can delay it and have a special meeting, but I do recommend that we approve it because as he said, it's especially this year of all years with opening up Forest Spring, it's just to reduce it and especially by 12 mills, just can't happen.
Mr. President, I move that the board approve the Johnson County Revenue Neutral Rate Intent Form as presented by Mr. Schwinn.
I'll second the motion.
It's moved and seconded to approve the Johnson County Revenue Neutral Rate Intent Form as presented. Any comments or discussion? Rachel, please collect the vote.
Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Updike,
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Milius,
Yes.
Mrs. Sealing. Approved.
Yes.
Oh, there we go. Very good. Thank you. Moving on to our second action item is the cost of living resolution. Dr. Luttrell.
Yes, last month, again, Director of Finance Doug Schwinn, presented information as to ways that we could capture revenue that we were losing in another fund that, that where money has been levied. However, doing so, that particular fund would be to use the cost of living fund, which again, Spring Hill has never had to levy that. But at this time, again, it is felt that we probably need to put the wheels in motion so that we are able, when needed, to levy in that fund. However, as Director of Finance, Mr. Schwinn pointed out last month, is that to do that, it does require the board, if they are interested in allowing us to open that avenue up as needed, that you approve the resolution, and then we have to, again, just like you would have done years ago with the capital outlay, you have to then publish that in the newspaper. And then if there are individuals that would object to that, there's a process they can follow to try and, not have the district do that. But Mr. Schwinn is here again to answer any questions and maybe just kind of summarize once again why we feel it's appropriate that at this time we pass this resolution so that we have that in our back pocket moving forward, especially so that we can, if we're going to try to really, if anything, maintain a flat mill rate, this can really help us do that.
Yes, this just, it puts another tool in our back pocket. It's one we may not necessarily need to use this year, but long-term, I think it's going to come into play. As I mentioned, for the last several years, we've been levying an extraordinary growth, which we've qualified for. But those dollars don't last forever. They're tiered. When you ask the Board of Tax Appeals to approve your application, you have 2 years in which you can levy 100% of what you ask for. And then it starts to taper off to 90%, 75, 60, 45, 30, 15, 0. So it's an 8-year cycle and then it's gone. The nice thing about this is as those applications and authority dissipate, we can backfill with this to still have the same amount of operating dollars. So it's really it's a trade-off. It's not a situation we're going, oh, we need more operating cash, so let's levy more here. That's not the goal. It's a situation where we can trade off levying over on this side in extraordinary growth to levy in cost of living. It'll also help us look more like our neighbors. Most of our neighbors are not able to levy in extraordinary growth, but they have been taking advantage of the cost of living for several years now. So as it was mentioned previously, we're the only one in Johnson County not currently utilizing this particular levy. Any other questions on the process?
Did you apply for the extraordinary growth? You said you were gonna.
I plan to.
Okay.
I'm probably gonna bring that before you either August or maybe the 1st of September, the next application. It really kind of depends on how this year's budget comes together. So I know kind of what to ask for. It's an interesting application in that you basically tell them, this is how much money we need to open this building. and you can plug in almost whatever number you want, and nobody's calling up to make you justify it. Now, I put documentation together to support where my number comes from, but there's nobody coming back going, well, I question if this is legitimate or not. So it's supposed to be based on expenses associated with opening the new facility, and that's the numbers I try to gather and put together on the application.
Okay. Now, Link, you said this allows you to keep the mill levy flat. So this, if you levy something in COLA, it does not show up on the regular mill levy?
It will be showing up on the tax statement. And I believe it shows up as a separate line item.
It's not part of the 72 that we just.
Yes, it would be part of that.
Part
number.
of it.
Yeah,
Okay.
because extraordinary growth, which we're levying about 11.1 mils in right now, that number's going to go down.
Gotcha.
And so as that number goes down, this number will offset it.
Okay.
So I kind of look at this like when we did the capital outlay, it just gave you another option of levying in a different fund. It doesn't really, it could affect the mill levy, but
It could.
That's not the intention. The intention is giving you some flexibility on which funds to levy in. Is that correct?
Correct. And the nice thing about this is once it's approved, it's there, kind of like capital outlay. You have up to 8 mils. That's the max. If you ever decided to go down to 6, you could. And if you wanted to go back up to 8 the next year, you could. Now this is going to be based on the real numbers as far as what the home values are. So it's possible that one year our number could be that we have $2 million in authority, but let's say something happens to our housing market, the home values start to drop, but everybody else's stay stable. Maybe the following year we could only levy 1.8 million in that fund. So it's contingent upon market conditions and what's going on around us. But it wasn't that long ago that we didn't even qualify in this area, and with our home values going through the roof in our district, I think we're either going to be third or second highest average home value in the state of Kansas. So
I remember you saying that. Yes.
I never thought I would say that. You asked me 10 years ago, well, eventually you guys are going to have either the second or third highest valued homes in the state. I would have never predicted it, but it's real. We'll never catch Blue Valley though. Theirs is a little over 500,000. So.
Any other questions for Doug? Basically, it's just, I think you mentioned it's another tool.
It's a tool. Yeah.
That you can use, and as extraordinary growth leaves, this is an option
Yes.
to keep that balanced.
Otherwise, you could be a situation where you lose your ability to generate operating cash to provide pay for teachers and other staff. So we are very dependent upon extraordinary growth. And if it starts to taper off, we're going to need to find operating dollars somewhere else. And this would do it.
Any other questions or comments, discussion, questions for Mr. Schwinn?
Does the motion have to include reading the resolution?
Yes.
Okay, I just brought it up now. I lost it again.
I'll trust Candy. Candy's nodding her head yes. So I'll say it doesn't hurt.
If somebody else has it, please read it.
Pull that out.
Phil will. Okay. Here we go.
Mr. President, I move that the board adopt the cost of living adjustment resolution number 2309. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of Spring Hill School District shall be authorized to levy an ad valorem tax in an amount not to exceed the amount necessary to finance the cost attributable directly to the cost of paying cost of living salaries and wages. ad valorem tax authorized by this resolution may be levied unless a petition in opposition to the same signed by not less than 5% of the qualified electors of the school district is filed with the county election officer in Johnson County within 30 days after publication of this resolution. If the petition is filed, the county election officer shall submit the question of whether the levy of such a tax shall be authorized in accordance with the provisions of this resolution to the electors of the school district at the next general election of the school district, as is specified by the Board of Education of Spring Hill School District. Do you need to keep going? This is to certify that the above resolution was duly adopted, if it is.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's moved and seconded to approve the cost of living resolution 23-09 as previously read. Any final questions, comments, or discussion? Rachel, please collect the vote.
Mrs. Sealing,
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman,
Doug, I have 100% confidence in you, but I can't vote for a permanent levy, so no.
Mr. Updike,
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Milius,
Yes.
approved.
Thank you. Moving on to board work calendar. Dr. Latrell?
Yes, just also put that in there last month, no action needed, just again, keeping everybody updated as to what some of the main items that are going to be on the horizon, as well as it will be bringing to your attention over the course of the next fiscal year. Again, it's a very fluid document. Items will change likely as needed. There'll be some added, there'll be some adjusted to different months, but just keeping you updated so that you know what's coming up.
Very good. Any questions on the board work calendar? Board of Education member reports. Anything to report?
Do you want us to go through the things we submitted about the national?
Yeah,
School Board
can you
thing?
bring that up? Phil, on this is National School Board Association Orlando Conference. We had several members attend and had several takeaways. Sharon, do you want to walk through those that you?
Sure, and I maybe was a little bit of an overachiever here, but I kind of had a takeaway from every session, even that really bad one with the fake teacher interview. No, I think I had a takeaway from that too, but I don't want to go into too much depth, but I thought I went to a lot of really good sessions. The one on conflict and controversy to collaboration, it was a really new school board. And the main takeaway I got from that was that the school board as a board had a retreat, just the board, where they talked about how they were going to treat each other and communicate with each other. And then they developed a communication plan, a kind of a standards of protocol plan for the board, and everybody signed off on it. Like it was a collaborative thing. This is how we're going to talk to each other. This is how we're going to treat each other. And I thought that sounded like a really good idea, especially as you guys leave us in January and we have a whole group of new board members. I think that'd be a really good thing to do. And then it's going to kind of skip a few things, but the one Hearn School District in Texas, they were a very underachieving school district, and they started building community partnerships and kind of became a place where people like their kids to go. The biggest thing that I got from that was that when they started building these partnerships, they didn't just go to the community colleges and talk right to the president, but they started working with people that they knew, and the superintendent just started going to lunch with people. And so it wasn't like he went to the top dog and tried to get a commitment, but he worked through his relationships he already had and then built stronger relationships. And now they have some really good working relationships with both. It's close to Texas A&M and Prairie View A&M, where they're neighboring districts. They said that when he started there, those schools really didn't even care to have their kids as teacher candidates because they were just so underperforming. And then they've gone to having a really good relationship with some of those. The DLR, the session DLR did was really good about the CTE spaces. They had somebody from Cherry Creek in the Denver area and Lee Summit and Kalamazoo, Michigan. And I think that they would probably be willing to do a summation of that just for us if we wanted to see some of those things. Did you go to that one too?
I did.
Nicole? It was, and Dr. Luttrell, I think you were in there. Really amazing things that they were doing there. The one thing that really stood out to me with Lee Summit is that they, the community college used their space in the evening, and so they paid half their bond payment on the building, which I thought was a pretty good partnership there. The superintendent evaluation, we kind of talked about that already, I think. And then KASB is actually developing a student superintendent evaluation tool. So there's a webinar on Wednesday that I'm going to sit in on at noon. If anybody else wants to, Rachel registered me for that. So I think if they develop a good one, it'd probably be a good one to use. And then some of these others were on community engagement. I thought the one they talked about, instead of using the social emotional learning tag on everything, they called it self-leadership. And they said it was really more calling it what it is. You're teaching people to be responsible and self-leaders. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Then there were some others that was the podcasting one. We talked about some of these a little bit. So I think that's all I'll share for right now. Some good topics for board retreats, I think.
Yeah. And the important thing about this is really the district's investment in the board's professional learning, professional education specific to education. And so it's important, I think it's important that we always provide that opportunity for our board members to learn and grow professionally, gain more insight. And it's even more important that we don't just stay in our own bubble and that we get out and we talk to, you mentioned sitting in a session with the board president of a school in South Dakota. They're going to have a completely different dynamic. I know we've through different conferences, we've talked to people from all over the United States and from very, very small schools to the districts that have 100,000 students. And it's really fascinating to hear what their challenges and what they do. So Nicole, do you want to give a quick synopsis of?
Sure. Well, and I think there's only one of mine on here, but there were really two. That the DLR one was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Loved it. I would love to dive into that further. But then the other was on school safety, and the Santa Fe School District in Texas had a school shooting and it went through. It was their superintendent who is now retired. But she spoke kind of what their game plan was before, what preparation they had done before, what they did during, and how she would recommend people set up all sorts of plans to help them in an emergency like that, which is really interesting. Things that you wouldn't even think of, like where will we hold press conferences, like things you just don't think of, but in an emergency moment like that, if it's not really well thought through, it could not be the right decision.
Right.
And the things they learned from it, and the first things they did, she said the one thing that they didn't have in place, but she would encourage everyone, is having a reentry plan. So not even if it's a school shooting, but if at any sort of big emergency, natural disaster, anything, that what does a reentry plan look like for your students? Having even just the building blocks of that could help us navigate through something So I thought it was really, really great. Something that I would love to see us take pieces of it. And I'm sure we have an emergency plan, but knowing, and she had a presentation and I've requested it twice, but I haven't heard back from her, so hoping that I can.
Planning for that event that you hope never happens.
Yes.
Because if it does happen, if you don't have a plan, just as you said, it can be, it can compound the problem rather than helping, so. Any other comments?
Those were
Okay.
the two big ones. I sat through one about board agendas and the one with Jenna Hager and quite a few other smaller ones, but I will tell you, next year I'm going right to Brent to choose my, because I feel like I choose my type of things, right?
Uh-huh.
Like the things, and Brent chooses some great ones and he comes back and he's like, listen to this wonderful one I went to. And it's a little more like emotional than I would choose, which I love
They
that.
are.
So they are, I mean,
Yeah.
it's true. So, anyways, those are the ones that, those were the two that I thought were really, really great.
Okay, there's emotion around learning, right? And the more emotion around that learning, the more it sticks. Michelle talked about teachers every day putting on a performance to create that emotion and that engagement with our students. So I guess as we created this report, my focus was on actionable items that we could bring home and take advantage of. And so the first session I went to was understanding the key work of boards. And it was focusing on understanding, creating a clear path with respect to strategic plans, creating a constant vision, or keep in front of us the vision and mission of the district. And since we've come back, we read the mission and vision before every meeting, and it helps galvanize your thought process as you begin a board meeting and you start to think about how we're going to govern the district. We have asked, and Dr. Luttrell has scheduled a beat rate to updates on the strategic plan. I think it's important that we break that down into smaller pieces so that we're talking about clear processes at a single time rather than the overall strategic plan. So that was really understanding the key work. It's understanding that we're elected to govern. We have policies, we have one employee, and we focus on the governance and we don't stray too much outside of that. One of the things that I hadn't heard discussed before, and that was completing cause analysis when necessary. So understanding why things occurred, what the cause and effect relationship was to the outcome that occurred in that particular situation. I think it's something that's important to do in order to identify next actions. I think Michelle's had a great presentation this evening that talked about exit interviews and stay interviews. And that's a type of cause analysis because you're creating the cause and effect relationship between folks leaving and folks making a decision to stay. And so I think we're actually started down that path. Currently, there's a session on storytelling for leaders and sharing good news with the public and within our community. And one of the takeaways I took, that struck me as we were sitting there and taking in this learning is that budgets reveal the priority of the district. And when I saw that the vast majority of our budget goes to teachers and education and the students, and so that really shows it's a good demonstration of what our priorities are within this district. I guess I lean, Nicole, like you go to things that you're interested in. I do very similar because I think the roles and responsibilities of governance can never be too clear. And so I had sat in a session, interacted with folks for 2 or 3 hours about what do you do in order to really drive home and solidify the roles and responsibilities. And they gave a few examples that you can use in order to improve that. And one was to go places with the superintendent. I think we've done that several times. It shows a partnership. There's a lot of research that shows the relationship of how the a good relationship with the Board of Education and the superintendent creates better educational outcomes for their students. There's a lot of research behind that. Things like board retreats and building trust and being clear about what your expectations are, being very consistent in how you approach things, gaining the commitment, as Sharon mentioned, talking about board norms and how we're going to treat each other and how we're going to talk to each other, and we can hold ourselves accountable for that. Another session that I thought was very interesting is it was about civility and how to keep conversations productive when feelings are very strong and things get intense, and it all revolves around creating that culture of belonging. I think the word maps that Michelle presented had an interesting connection to that. And I guess it's a Stephen Covey quote where he says, change moves at the speed of trust. And so the greater the trust that's built within the board, with superintendent, administrators, and teachers, the greater, the higher rate that you can change and make improvements within your district. One of the things that I think is important as a board is when there is a challenging issue is we ask for that blind spot. We try to get an understanding of what that blind spot is, what we're actually missing here, and what the board, just to close this out, is always asking ourselves, what does the board own of this issue? How are we responsible? How were we accountable for some of the actions that have occurred? And sometimes we have responsibilities for that and sometimes we don't, but I think it's important to always bring that up in your conversation. We talked through going from being a citizen to a board member and how those things, how that going from a citizen to a board member, there's certain things that happen there. When you think about a citizen, you respond as a single individual, typically will commiserate around the issues and respond with an opinion, and responds very quickly, immediately, and really has private communications around various issues and topics. Board members speak as a board, and no board member has any more. The only time board members have authority is when 4 or more of us are collected in a communicated and published meeting. So it's important we understand that. So board members, that's where their authority comes from, is when 4 or more are collected. They respond as directing concerns via the chain of the command, rather than straight to board issues. Our board members, we respond with ensuring that the communication chain of command has been respected. We also have to respond via policy, what our policies state, and we respond not immediately, but after due diligence has occurred, and we do that with public communications. So I thought it was important to have that learning, that education, that understanding. The folks, probably the greatest value that at least I personally get out of is the interaction with board members from around the countries. I did within this report, which is attached to the agenda, I outlined 11 action items that I think that I've previously mentioned, but that I think it's important that we at least take into consideration as board member, as we move forward as a Board of Education. There are 10 takeaways that I have listed there. So I know the engagement that we had within the National School Board Conference was good. I saw a lot of engagement of our board members. I'm proud to be a board member here at USD230. And so I think also I guess there were 6 of us that went this year, communicate that pride in our district. So.
When they're just 5.
Or 5 of us, I guess.
Yeah.
So, I think it's a great value for Board of Education members because it further develops our insight and views and professionalism as a board. That's what I have. So I think that those are with 3 board members that contributed to this report. I appreciate the time that you took to do that. It's important that we continue to communicate that.
I will get mine in there eventually.
Okay.
I'll get them to you. So hopefully in the next month or two.
Yeah, well, it's important to capture it because it's easy for, you get an enormous amount of information plugged into your brain and it wanes over time. So capturing it so that we can go back.
Just looking at my notes, the majority of my sessions, the things that I went to, the data I brought back is best for a building level administrator. It's programs and different ways of teaching and doing this and that. It's not, most of it's not something the board would ever be involved in. But there was two of them that I pulled out here. I went to one on parental rights, and I don't know if they were just trying to rile up every person in there, but it was rather strange and all over the place. They talked about banning books and sex ed and pronouns, and then they went over how much the government actually controls all that, and I had no idea that they actually, you can do this and you can't do that. It was strange. But I did go to the one that the guys at Emporia put on. I don't know if anyone else went to that. It was on teacher retention.
Yeah, it was on this.
Yeah.
It was actually this exact report that came out. That's
Yeah.
what that was on. I
mean,
was
there
at that
so
one.
many things. I was just looking at my notes. I was like, what, reading through Michelle's presentation. But they did say some things about they talked about transactional things like salary and benefits, and then transformational items like your contacts and your PE. But it said they were interesting to tell that the millennials were more likely to leave the profession, and getting time off was not an incentive for millennials. I don't know where they came up with that. That's just what they said. I don't know that I agree with that, but another thing, they said the cost of teacher turnover, and I believe this was in Kansas from 2019 to 2021. It's $20,000 to $30,000 per teacher. There was 4,300 teachers for $86 million. That was the cost of losing.
Yeah, it's the retention that's
Yes.
another reason that retention is so critical.
Just a huge number. Anyway, yeah, that's some of the notes, but I'll get it in there eventually.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Brent.
I can add a couple more stats to that. 80% of the grads stay in Kansas City. I think this is what it's from. Oh, hold on. That might have been a different one. Never mind. But I went to a couple on retention, and it's really interesting,
It
the
was.
information they bring
Yeah.
about Kansas itself. And I say kids, but that's not it. Young adults entering the workforce. So.
Mhm.
And how amazing is it that we have, what I think Michelle said, we have 7 Spring Hill High School graduates that have come back to teach in our district for this year. Yeah, just this year. So that's real information that shows how they value the district. So very good. Well, thanks, everyone. Appreciate everyone's, sometimes it's tough to make the time to do that, but I'm appreciating and glad that everyone did take the time. So let's move on to the superintendent report, Dr. Latrell.
Again, just a couple quick items again, and we are already gearing up for next school year. As you know, we did fall a little bit short near the finish line with our initiative to get current year funding passed, which was huge for not only us, but for growing district. We fell a little bit short, but we're already have been trying to regroup and strategize for the next legislative session now that we've kind of had time to collect our thoughts. We have had a lunch meeting with Representative Thomas, who's willing to champion that cause again this next legislative session. And we've also actually had an in-person meeting this afternoon with Dr. Brian Jordan and Leah Fitter, with them of ways that we can partner with them to make sure that it gets prominently possibly into their legislative platform. And we feel very promising because we feel once we get in front of key individuals and share with them the rationale as to why it is impactful for us and other districts in similar position, it's a concept very easy to understand. So we continue to planning for that, and that's going to take quite a bit of time over the course of the next several months. And then we also again are putting all the final touches on making sure that Forest Spring Middle School is ready to open for the new school year. And we will be having a ribbon cutting / open house for the community and for people to come take a tour of that. And that will be on Tuesday, August the 8th at 5:30 PM. So again, hopefully you can mark that in your calendar. And I'm sure that as that date nears, there'll be more materials and information about that and what that evening will look like and what's available on our various platforms. That's my superintendent's report.
Very good, thank you. We do need a couple executive sessions this evening.
Mr. President, I move that the board recess to executive session for the purpose of discussing personnel matters of non-elected personnel to protect the privacy interests of an identifiable individual under coma. Those to be in session include Board of Education members, Superintendent of Schools, Assistant Superintendent of Schools, and administrators as requested. The executive session will begin at 8:45. Is that okay? Do we need that much time? 8:45. And with the open meeting resuming no later than 9:15.
You want to start with 9:15?
9:15.
And then if we
At
need to
this
extend
place.
it, we can extend it.
We do need a second.
Second.
It's moved and seconded to move to executive session for the purpose of discussing personnel matters, non-elected personnel under coma. Rachel, please collect the vote.
Mr. Updike,
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Milius,
Yes.
Mrs. Sealing,
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
approved.
That is their game. Does that make sense? Oh, no, it doesn't, I think. We're gonna. I need to.
Britain Hart.
It is Britain's hard. He called last year about the superintendent's evaluations.
Yeah, not that there would be any. I was almost thinking of before people.
That's what I was.
Yeah, yeah.
Some go. This is, just listen to this.
I think also. Well, yeah, meeting with people, you just have the three people. You could do, you wouldn't have to do it in an open setting, if you're not in office yet, not that you want to do that.
It's just a communication.
Yeah, I know. I know. No, I know. I wonder if we need these. We don't need these. I gotta do it.
How goes it now?
Okay. Yes, you?
I just looked up the
Rolling
KASB
down
conference,
this way. Yeah.
December. They're showing that registration opens July 7th. They've never seen that registration.
Is it back here in Overland Park again? Wichita again?
It's not here. Oh, it's here this year.
I'll go back and
Last year
check.
it was out.
That was Wichita last
It
year.
was in Wichita last year.
Said 2023, I thought. And of course, we were hoping that we could get into November, figure out who was elected,
Yeah.
and
Absolutely.
then make sure we get everybody signed up.
Oh, I think you can.
Yes.
You can switch people out. I'm sure.
2023
I
annual
think you could
convention.
still sign them up. I don't think they're gonna turn any members away.
Wichita, November 10th to the 12th,
Well,
2023.
cause it was in, I know it was in Wichita last year
Yeah.
because we were out there.
But we're gonna have to watch that date, because if we have to commit to hotel rooms to get the things, we may just have to log in two people that are ghosts or something.
I would think you.
You could put the current member's name, I think, and then switch it up.
Yeah,
But I thought you guys all wanted to go as well, so that you can start
do.
training the new board members.
yeah, I think it's important to sit next to folks.
Right. And say, this is important, wake up.
Exactly. That's what I said, is like, yeah, you can ignore this, but you have to pay attention to this, so that's the kind of thing.
So we'll figure it out what we have to do.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure we get enough slots and enough hotel rooms.
Totally just keep.
Yeah, everybody,
I think you can,
yeah, and everybody together.
I move we extend until nine,
No later than.
no later than 9:40.
Second. Take your pick.
Sure.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Milius,
Yes.
Mrs. Sealing,
Oh, she's
Oh.
in.
Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Updike,
Yes.
approved.
Oh, I brought my computer. Move we extend the executive session till no later than 10 PM.
Second.
It's moved second to move the executive session to, or extend the executive session no later than 10 PM. Rachel, please collect the vote.
Mr. Updike,
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Milius,
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
approved.
We're back in session. We do need another executive session.
Mr. President, I move that the board go into executive session to discuss employer-employee negotiations under coma. Those to be in session include Board of Education members, superintendent of schools, assistant superintendent of schools, and administrators as requested. The executive session will begin at 9:52. And we will resume the regular meeting in this place no later than 10:30. 10:30.
Oh, second. So what do you do?
It's moved and seconded to move to executive session concerning matters related to employer-employee negotiations under coma. Rachel, please collect the vote.
Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Updike,
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Milius,
Yes.
approved.
Back in session.
Do this.
We do have a few action items. 4 action items. Hey, Phil, is Ally back in?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, good, thanks.
Right, Mr. President, I move we approve the recommendation for the assistant principal / athletic director position at Woodland Spring Middle School as recommended.
Second.
It's moved in second to approve the recommendation for the assistant principal at Woodland Spring Middle School. Rachel, please collect the vote.
You want to put the name in there, Scott? Mr. Scott Peavy?
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Milius,
Yes.
Mrs. Sealing,
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Updike,
Yes,
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
approved.
thank you. Moving on to negotiations.
Okay, Mr. President, I move that we approve the master agreement for 2023-2024 as settled with the Spring Hill Education Association through recent negotiations as recommended by the superintendent of schools.
Second the motion.
It's moved in second to approve the master agreement for 2023-2024 as settled but with the Spring Hill Education Association through recent negotiations as recommended by the superintendent of schools. Rachel, please collect the vote.
Mrs. Milius,
Yes.
Mrs. Sealing, Mrs. Sealing, Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Updike,
Yes,
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
approved.
very good. Moving on to our next agenda item, approve classified certified and administrative compensation benefit package for the 23-24 school year as recommended by the superintendent.
Mr. President, I so move.
Second.
It's moved and seconded to approve the classified, certified and administrator compensation benefit package for the 23-24 school year as recommended by the superintendent. Rachel, please collect the vote.
Mrs. Milius,
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Updike,
Yes,
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
approved.
very good. Moving on to our next agenda item.
Excuse me?
Gonna make a motion? Note that Karen Mitchell has recused herself.
Mr. President, I move we approve the superintendent's compensation package for the 23-24 year.
Second.
It's moved and seconded to approve the superintendent's compensation package for 2023-2024. Rachel, please collect the vote.
Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Updike,
Yes,
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Milius,
Yes.
approved.
very good. Thank you.